What happens when you make one impulsive decision to avoid consequences, but it shatters your marriage beyond repair? Can you justify cheating to save yourself from a minor inconvenience, or does it spiral into a nightmare that you can never undo? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Eliza. I'm 32 years old, and I've always believed that if you can talk your way out of something, then you should. I've never been one for confrontation or for letting things get complicated when there's an easier, smoother path out. So, when I found myself in a tight spot with a speeding ticket, I didn't think twice about doing whatever it took to avoid the consequences. I never imagined that one rash decision would turn my life upside down. It all started on a Tuesday afternoon. I was on my way home from work, running a bit late, as usual. My boss had just piled more work on my desk, and my head was buzzing with deadlines. The weather was terrible and traffic was a mess, but I wasn't too concerned. I'd dealt with worse, right? The only thing on my mind was getting home in time to make dinner and keep up appearances. I don't know why I was speeding. Maybe I thought I could make it home faster. Maybe it was because I felt like I deserved to cut some corners. I'd been working non-stop, juggling office tasks, meetings, and family life. Mark, my husband, hadn't been much help lately. He was always tired, and I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation. I couldn't even remember the last time he'd truly looked at me, not just as the mother of his children or the wife who handled everything, but as someone he actually cared about. So, speeding felt like a way of taking control, of getting something back for myself. I was zipping down the main street when the flashing blue lights appeared behind me. My heart sank. The officer pulled me over, and I could feel the familiar rush of panic. This wasn't the first time I'd been stopped, but I was certain it would be my last. Officer Blake got out of his car and approached my window. I put on my best apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry, officer. I didn't realize I was speeding," I said, my voice just the right mix of contrition and innocence. He didn't respond immediately, just took a long look at me, his eyes scanning me in a way that made me feel exposed. He finally asked for my license and registration, and I handed them over with a shaky hand. When he came back to my car after checking my details, I was already rehearsing my apology in my head. I had to say the right things, make him believe I was just another distracted driver. But Officer Blake surprised me. "I could write you a ticket, but that's not really what I want to do," he said, his voice low and calm. His tone wasn't what I expected. There was something else there, something that made my stomach twist. My first instinct was to try to brush it off. Maybe he was just being nice. Maybe I could talk my way out of this, as I had so many times before. But instead, I just nodded, waiting for him to continue. "You know, I've seen you around before," he said. "I work in this area, and I've passed you a couple of times." He looked me over again. "Maybe I can give you a different kind of warning. How about we skip the ticket altogether, and you buy me a drink sometime?" The suggestion hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at him, my mind racing. Was he flirting with me? Was this even happening? The idea of paying for his silence, or whatever it was, immediately took hold of my thoughts. I had no idea what came over me, but the pressure of the moment, the desire to avoid the hassle of a ticket, made it impossible to think rationally. I don't think that's really appropriate," I managed to say, my voice shaky. But his calm, confident demeanor made it clear he was used to getting what he wanted. I wasn't exactly sure what to do. He stepped closer to the car, leaning in slightly. "Listen, it's just a drink. No harm in it, right? You look like someone who could use a little break from the daily grind. It's just one drink." The words kept echoing in my head. I was trying to process the situation, but all I could think about was getting out of this mess. The ticket would be a headache. Mark would be disappointed. My family would find out. I just needed to make this go away. And then it happened. Without thinking, I nodded. Okay, I said, surprising myself with how easily the words left my mouth. But just one drink. Officer Blake smiled, his eyes lighting up with a mix of victory and something else I couldn't quite place. Good, he said. Let's just say it's a small favor, and you don't have to worry about this speeding ticket anymore. He handed me back my papers, and before I could say anything else, he turned and walked back to his car. I sat there in stunned silence for a moment, the adrenaline of the situation still racing through me. I couldn't believe what had just happened. What was I thinking? How could I have agreed to that? I barely knew this man. He was a cop, for crying out loud. This wasn't just some innocent flirtation. It was wrong, and I knew it. But as I drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd dodged the ticket, I'd avoided the consequences, and I had something to hold on to. A small victory, a fleeting sense of power. I walked into the house later that evening, and Mark was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. He didn't even look up as I entered. I stood there for a moment, wondering if he'd even noticed I was home. It didn't seem like it. The silence between us had become so much a part of our routine that I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a meaningful conversation. Hey, I said, trying to sound normal. How was your day? He shrugged, not bothering to take his eyes off the screen. Fine. I stood there, feeling the weight of the moment, the strange guilt gnawing at me. I hadn't done anything wrong, had I? I hadn't actually cheated, right? It was just one drink, one little mistake, and I was going to leave it behind. I'd make it go away, like everything else. But as I walked to the kitchen to make dinner, the nagging voice in my head wouldn't stop. This wasn't like anything else. This was something I couldn't just ignore, and as much as I tried to push it away, I knew deep down that it would come back to haunt me. I had no idea how bad it would get. I thought I could get away with it. I thought it was just a one-time slip, a little secret I could keep. But the consequences of that decision, of letting Officer Blake into my life, were going to reverberate in ways I couldn't have imagined. By the time Mark finally said something to me, I realized just how far I'd pushed him. But that was the least of my worries now. The damage had been done, and the worst part was that I hadn't even seen it coming. I thought I could just forget about what had happened with Officer Blake. After all, it was just one drink, right? No harm done. I was too smart to let anything else happen, and I wasn't about to let that one lapse ruin my life. But as the days went by, I started to feel the weight of that choice creeping up on me. It wasn't the ticket that worried me anymore. It was the secret I was keeping from Mark. At first, I tried to act like nothing had changed. I went about my days, kept the house in order, made dinner, and pretended everything was fine between Mark and me. But every time he looked at me, I felt this gnawing guilt. I didn't know why. Mark hadn't said anything that would make me think he knew. He hadn't even noticed my stress. Or maybe he had. He just didn't care anymore. Mark had become distant over the past few months. I kept telling myself it was just the routine of married life, but deep down, I knew something was off. There was a lack of intimacy, not just in the physical sense, but in the emotional one too. He was no longer the attentive husband who used to shower me with compliments or surprise me with little gestures. Now he was just there, sitting beside me at the dinner table, watching TV with me, but there was no spark, no real conversation. "Hey, Eliza," Mark said one night after dinner, breaking the silence as we sat on opposite sides of the couch, staring at the TV. "I've noticed you've been acting a little different lately." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Did he know? My mind raced to think of an excuse. "I'm just tired, that's all," I said, trying to sound casual. "Work has been crazy. You know how it is." Mark raised an eyebrow, not convinced. "I get that. But it's not just work. You've been distracted. Are you okay?" I didn't know how to respond. I'd spent the last few days pushing away the guilt, convincing myself it wasn't a big deal. But now, sitting across from Mark, I could see the cracks in our marriage. He was looking at me like he was still trying to understand who I was, but I didn't have any answers for him, not now. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just need some time to unwind, that's all." Mark nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't fully buying it. He didn't press further, but the conversation lingered in the air, and I could feel the distance between us widening. I thought back to the night I'd met Officer Blake, the thrill of it all. The idea that I could still get attention, feel desired. It was intoxicating. But in that moment, sitting next to Mark, I realized just how much I had taken him for granted. He had always been the steady one in our relationship, the reliable one. And I had thrown that away for something so fleeting, something that didn't even matter. The next day, as I was leaving for work, I saw Mark sitting at the kitchen table, looking down at his phone, his face blank. He barely looked up when I kissed him goodbye. It was like he didn't even care. I was too proud to let myself feel guilty, so I pushed the thought aside. There was still time to fix things, still time to make things right. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Officer Blake. His smooth voice, the way he had made me feel like I mattered. I couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at me, like I was the only thing that mattered in that moment. I hadn't felt that in so long. Mark didn't see me like that anymore. He had stopped noticing. As the days went by, I saw more signs that Mark was withdrawing. He'd come home from work, barely speaking to me. We didn't fight, he wasn't that kind of guy, but we didn't talk either. He was always on his phone, always distracted, and I was too wrapped up in my own thoughts to notice how much I was pushing him away. One afternoon, I was running errands when I ran into Officer Blake again. He was standing outside a coffee shop talking to a colleague. I felt a jolt of surprise when he saw me and gave me a small wave. I wasn't sure how to react, so I waved back awkwardly. He walked over to me, his smile wide. "Eliza," he said, his voice low and casual. "Fancy running into you again." I didn't know what to say. The guilt weighed heavy in my chest. I had already convinced myself that it was a one-time thing, that nothing would come of it, but now, seeing him in person again, I couldn't help but feel the pull. It was like something inside of me wanted to keep the secret alive, to keep that moment of freedom and excitement. "Hey, Blake," I said, trying to sound normal. "It's good to see you." He raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. "I didn't think you'd be out here running errands. I thought you'd be home, relaxing after that long day at work." I felt a pang of unease, but I shrugged it off. Just trying to get some things done. We stood there for a moment, awkwardly silent. I could feel the tension between us, a tension I hadn't realized was there before. Was it guilt, or was it the thrill of knowing that this secret was still between us? "I've been thinking about that drink," Officer Blake said, his tone shifting slightly, more serious now. "You still up for it?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment I hesitated. My mind raced, the thought of continuing this dangerous game swirling around in my head. But then I remembered Mark. I remembered the way he had looked at me the night before, the way he seemed to be slipping away. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm married. I'm not that kind of person." Blake chuckled softly. "Right, I get it. No pressure. Just thought I'd ask." I turned away before he could say anything else, walking quickly down the street, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over me. As I walked back to the car, my mind raced. Had I just made a mistake? Was I lying to myself when I told Blake that I was not that kind of person? Because deep down, I knew the truth. I knew what I had done, and I knew it was only a matter of time before Mark found out. That night, Mark came home late, as usual. I was already in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the thoughts that kept swirling in my mind. When Mark walked in, I barely acknowledged him. He sat down on the edge of the bed, his back to me. I couldn't see his face, but I could tell he was tired. "Eliza," he said, his voice quiet, "I think we need to talk." I froze. This was it. the moment I had been dreading. I turned to face him, my heart hammering in my chest. "What is it?" I asked, trying to sound calm, but the panic was already starting to rise. "I don't know what's going on with us," he said, his voice still calm, "but I can feel it. There's something different. You're not the same anymore." My mind raced. Had he found out? Did he know what I had done? Was it over? "I'm just tired, Mark," I said, trying to avoid the question. "It's work. It's nothing, really." But Mark didn't respond. Instead, he just sat there, staring at the floor. The silence between us was deafening, and I could feel the distance growing even further. It was like he was already gone, even though he was still physically there. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I need something more than this, Eliza. I need more than this." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. More than this. Was that what he thought of me now? Was I just something to be tolerated? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. There was nothing I could say that would fix this, nothing that would bring us back to where we used to be. Mark stood up, his face unreadable. "I'm going to bed," he said, his voice flat. And with that, he walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I lay there in the darkness, my mind racing. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could control it. But now, I was realizing just how deep the damage had already gone. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure if I could fix it. I spent the next few days trying to convince myself that everything would be okay, that I could still fix things with Mark. But as the silence between us grew heavier, I began to realize that I wasn't just lying to him anymore. I was lying to myself. I had made choices, bad choices, that had put us on this path, and now it seemed like I couldn't undo them. The nights were the hardest. Mark came home late, and by the time he walked in, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep, pretending that everything was normal. He would leave the light on, quietly undress, and climb into bed, his back turned toward me. It was like we were strangers sharing a bed, nothing more. I could feel the distance between us in every inch of the mattress. It didn't help that I kept thinking about Officer Blake. Every time I thought about the night I met him, I couldn't deny how alive I felt, how seen I was. I'd spent so long feeling invisible to Mark, to my own life, and that one drink, that one decision had made me feel like I mattered. I had convinced myself it was just a mistake, a one-time slip, but now, every glance in Blake's direction made me feel like I was on the edge of something I couldn't take back. I tried to distract myself, work, chores, pretending that nothing was wrong. I even made an effort to be nice to Mark, to do the things I knew would make him feel like I still cared. But the more I tried, the more I realized it was too late. Mark wasn't responding. He was withdrawn, distant, and I couldn't figure out how to break through. I was suffocating in the silence. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. After dinner, I sat down at the kitchen table and waited for Mark to come in. The house felt cold, too quiet. I knew this moment was coming, the conversation we needed to have, but I was terrified of what it would reveal, terrified that Mark had already figured out what I had done. Mark finally walked in, his face tired, his eyes distant. He didn't greet me. He didn't even look at me as he sat down across from me. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words wouldn't come. How could I even start? Where did I begin? "I've been thinking a lot," Mark said suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice was quieter than usual. It was like he was talking to someone he didn't even recognize anymore. "I don't know what happened between us, but I can feel it. You've been different." I swallowed hard. "I'm not. What do you mean?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but the panic was bubbling up inside me. I couldn't keep the lie going any longer. I needed to come clean. I needed to fix this, even if it meant facing the truth. Mark looked at me, his eyes searching mine for something. "You're not the same. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know when it happened, but it feels like I'm losing you." My heart dropped into my stomach. It felt like everything was falling apart in slow motion. Mark, I don't know what you're talking about. He shook his head, his jaw tight with frustration. Stop. Just stop pretending, Eliza. I know something's going on, and if you won't tell me, then I don't know what to do. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with unspoken words. I opened my mouth, ready to confess everything, to tell him about Officer Blake, about the stupid decision I had made, but the words caught in my throat. Would it even matter? Would he even care? I couldn't bring myself to say it. I couldn't risk it. The guilt was eating me alive, but I was still too scared of the consequences, too scared of losing him for good. Mark's face softened slightly, but the hurt in his eyes was clear. I don't want to lose you, Eliza, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when you're shutting me out. If you're not going to tell me what's going on, then I need to know what we're doing here. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to confess everything, to beg for forgiveness, but I couldn't. The shame was too much. I felt like a coward, hiding behind my lies and my fear. So, instead, I stood up and walked out of the room, leaving Mark sitting at the table, the weight of my silence hanging in the air. The next day, everything felt different. The atmosphere in the house was thick with tension, but neither of us knew how to break it. We went through the motions, eating dinner, watching TV, but it was like we were both waiting for something that never came. I couldn't stop thinking about what Mark had said. He knew. He knew something was wrong, even if he didn't know exactly what. The worst part? I didn't even know how to fix it. I kept telling myself that I'd find a way, that it wasn't too late. But deep down, I knew I had already crossed a line. Officer Blake had been just a symptom of the bigger problem, the gap between Mark and me, the emotional distance that had been growing for months, even years. I had been chasing something outside my marriage because I felt like it was the only way to feel alive again. But now, it was too late. There was no going back. As the days passed, I saw more signs of Mark's withdrawal. He didn't fight with me. He didn't yell or demand answers. He just became quieter, more distant. It was like I had already lost him, but I didn't even know how. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the living room, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, I got a text from Officer Blake. The message was simple. Hey, Eliza, just wanted to check in. I'm free tonight if you want to grab that drink. I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. For a moment, I thought about responding. Maybe I could just go, just for a quick drink. But then I thought of Mark. I thought of everything I stood to lose. The guilt hit me like a wave, drowning out any desire to reach out to Blake. I deleted the message without responding, but the damage had already been done. Every time I looked at my phone, every time I passed Officer Blake in the street, I was reminded of what I had almost done. I was reminded of the person I had become, and as much as I wanted to push it all away, I couldn't escape the truth. I had betrayed Mark, not just with my actions, but with my indifference, with my failure to communicate, with my refusal to face the issues that had been building between us for so long. The silence between us had turned into a slow, painful unraveling, and I was too scared to stop it, too scared to admit what I had done, too scared to face the consequences. That night, Mark came home late again. He didn't say anything as he passed me in the hallway. He didn't even look at me as he went to the bathroom, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where he had been, and for the first time in a long while, I realized just how much I had lost. And I didn't know if I could get it back. The days that followed were a blur. Mark had become a ghost in our home, moving through the motions but never really there. I couldn't ignore the cold distance between us, but no matter how many times I tried to reach out, he stayed silent. There were no arguments, no confrontations. Just a quiet, slow separation that was eating away at the fabric of our marriage. I told myself that if I just kept trying, kept doing the right things, things would get better. But the truth was, I didn't know how to fix what I had broken. I had taken so much for granted, and now Mark seemed like a stranger to me, as though the bond we had once shared had been dissolved without either of us fully understanding it. One night, I came home from work later than usual. As I opened the door, I was met with an unexpected sight. Mark sitting on the couch, his eyes focused on the TV. But he didn't react when I walked in. There was no, "Hey, how was your day?" or even the faintest smile. His expression remained flat, emotionless. I stood there for a moment, wondering if I should say something, apologize. But I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to fix things that were so broken. I had tried so many times to justify my actions to myself, but now, staring at Mark, I realized that no amount of excuses would ever make this right. "Mark," I said, my voice tentative, "we need to talk." He didn't look at me. He didn't even flinch. "About what?" he asked, his tone flat and distant. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, not at him, but at myself. I had done this to us. I had been so focused on what I wanted, on filling some emptiness inside me, that I didn't care enough about him. I had been selfish, and now he was shutting me out. I began, but my words caught in my throat. "I know I've been distant. I've been trying to fix it, but I don't know how to make it right." Mark finally turned his head to look at me, his gaze cold and unreadable. "Eliza, I don't know if you understand, but you can't just fix this with words. You can't just act like everything is okay because you say it is." I winced at his words. It was true. I had spent too much time trying to brush things under the rug. I had convinced myself that time would fix everything, but time had only made things worse. The more I ignored the problem, the deeper the rift between us grew. "I know," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know how to make up for it." Mark looked at me for a long moment, his expression softening just a fraction. "You can't fix this just by saying sorry, Eliza. I've been trying to figure out where we went wrong, and the truth is, I've been trying to hold on to something that's already gone." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. "Please don't say that." He sighed, rubbing his temples as if trying to block out the pain. "I don't know what happened to us. I don't know when things started falling apart, but I can't pretend everything's fine when it's not. You've been shutting me out, and now I'm the one who's left picking up the pieces. And I can't keep doing it anymore, Eliza." His words hit me harder than I expected. It felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about the affair with Officer Blake. This wasn't just about the speeding ticket. This was about years of emotional neglect, of taking Mark for granted, of not communicating, of not caring enough to make him feel like he mattered. "I'm so sorry," I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been so selfish. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for it to get this bad." Mark didn't respond immediately. He just stared at me, his face still unreadable. The silence between us stretched on, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the weight of the last few months pressing down on me, and the realization that Mark was slipping away was almost too much to bear. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Eliza," he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't know if I can keep living like this. You say you're sorry, but I don't feel like you're sorry for me. I feel like you're just sorry you got caught." I froze at his words. It wasn't just that he was hurt. It wasn't just that he was angry. It was the way he was speaking, like he had already emotionally checked out, like he was done. "I never meant to hurt you like this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I love you, Mark. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I let it get this far." Mark's eyes flickered with something, maybe sadness, maybe frustration, but he didn't say anything. He simply stood up, walked toward the door, and grabbed his jacket. "I need some space," he said quietly. "I can't do this right now." And with that, he walked out, leaving me alone in the quiet emptiness of our home. I stood there for a moment, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. He was leaving, not physically, but emotionally. He had already checked out of our marriage, and I didn't know how to get him back. The next few days were a blur of silence. Mark didn't call. He didn't text. He just went about his days, staying at work longer, staying out later, barely acknowledging me when he came home. He still did the necessary things, made dinner, washed the dishes, but there was no real connection. There was no warmth. It felt like I was living in a house with a stranger. I tried to talk to him, but every time I did, he shut me down. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't raising his voice. He was just indifferent. And that hurt more than anything. He had given up on us, and it felt like I was losing him for good. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't just wait for him to come around. I couldn't just sit in the silence, hoping that somehow things would get better on their own. So I did what I always did. I tried to fix things by doing it my way. I texted Officer Blake again, telling him I was ready to meet for that drink. It was stupid, I knew that, but I couldn't stop myself. I wanted to feel desired again. I wanted to feel wanted, and in that moment, I convinced myself that meeting Blake was just a harmless escape. When we met, it felt familiar. It felt safe. And for a brief moment, I forgot about the mess I had created. I forgot about Mark. It was just me and Blake, and I felt like I could breathe again. But deep down, I knew this was wrong. I knew this wasn't the way to fix my marriage. I was just running from the pain, avoiding the reality that I had already lost everything that mattered. I didn't realize then how deep I had sunk into the hole I'd dug for myself. But I would soon find out that no amount of distractions could erase the consequences of my actions. The truth was already out there. It was just a matter of time before Mark found out everything. And when he did, I would have no one to blame but myself. The inevitable day arrived. I had been running from the consequences for so long, but there was no escaping it anymore. Mark was done. And in the quiet that had built between us, the reality of everything I had done, the affair with Officer Blake, the emotional neglect, the lies, finally hit me with full force. It all started with a text message. It came in the middle of the afternoon while I was at work. The message was simple, but the implications were devastating. "Can we talk when you get home?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart sinking with each passing second. I already knew what it was about. Mark knew. He had to know. The silence had been broken. There was no more pretending, no more hiding. The truth was finally out. I tried to push the fear away, but it clung to me like a weight I couldn't shake off. I couldn't avoid the conversation anymore. I couldn't put it off. Mark was ready, and he deserved to know the truth. When I got home, the house was eerily quiet. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of him. He didn't even look up when I entered, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. The air between us was thick with everything unspoken. I stood in the doorway, unsure of what to say. Mark finally looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "Sit down," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. I walked over to the table, my legs feeling weak beneath me. I sat down across from him, trying to steady my breathing, but the tightness in my chest wouldn't let up. "I don't know how to start this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything," Mark replied, his voice distant. "I already know." I froze, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" Mark slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a series of text messages between me and Officer Blake. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to read them to know exactly what was there. They were proof of everything I had tried so desperately to hide. I felt the blood drain from my face as I looked at the screen. The conversation between Blake and me was clear, and it was damning. I had told myself that it was a one-time thing, that it didn't mean anything. But now, there it was, evidence of my betrayal. And Mark had found it. "I saw the messages," Mark said quietly. I didn't want to believe it at first, I thought maybe there was an explanation. Maybe you were just looking for attention or validation, but then I saw the rest. I saw everything. I felt like I was drowning. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. My guilt was suffocating me, and I couldn't look Mark in the eye. The shame of what I had done felt unbearable. I never meant for it to get this far, I said, my voice cracking. I didn't think it was anything serious. It was just a mistake, Mark. I'm so sorry. Mark didn't respond immediately. He just stared at the table, his hands folded in front of him. I could feel the distance between us growing, the finality of this moment sinking in. You know what hurts the most? Mark finally said, his voice trembling slightly. It's not the affair. It's not the lies. It's that you didn't even think enough of me to be honest. You kept this secret from me. And all this time, I thought we were still something. I thought we were still a team. The pain in his voice was like a knife to my heart. I had betrayed him, yes, but what hurt more than anything was that I had betrayed the bond we had built over the years. I had let my selfishness tear it apart, and now I couldn't fix it. I was trying to fix something in myself, I said softly. I felt like I was fading away, like I wasn't enough for you anymore. But I was wrong. I should have talked to you, I should have been honest, but I was scared. I didn't know how to fix it. Mark shook his head, a bitter smile crossing his face. I don't know if you could have fixed it. I don't know if I could have fixed it either. But you made your choice, Eliza, and now I have to make mine. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I can't keep living like this, he said, his voice steady. I can't keep pretending that everything's fine. I can't keep walking on eggshells, hoping that one day you'll come back to me. I need more than that. I need honesty. I need trust. I wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but I couldn't. I had no right to ask him to forgive me, not after everything I had done. And as much as I hated it, I knew deep down that Mark was right. He deserved more than I had given him. He deserved better than the wife I had been. I understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've hurt you so much, and I don't know how to fix it. I wish I could take it all back. Mark stood up from the table, his eyes never leaving mine. I know you do, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. He grabbed the stack of papers and held them out to me. I've made copies. I've been thinking about what comes next. I don't know what that means yet, but I need time to figure it out. I reached for the papers, my hands shaking. As I took them from him, I felt like I was holding the remnants of my marriage in my hands. All the words, all the promises, all the years together, it all felt so fragile now, like it could fall apart at any second. Mark, please, I said, my voice breaking. Don't leave me. I'll do anything. I'll fix this. I can't lose you. He looked at me one last time, his expression soft but resolute. I don't want to lose you either, Eliza, but I don't know if I can stay. I need to see if I can still trust you. I need to see if we can rebuild what we had, but I can't do that right now. And with that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me sitting at the table alone. The silence that followed was deafening. It was a silence that had been building for months, and now it was the only thing left. Mark wasn't gone yet, but I could feel him slipping away from me. I had lost him. I had lost everything that mattered. I sat there for a long time, the weight of my mistakes crashing down on me. I had destroyed my marriage, destroyed my life. And now, all I had left were the pieces, scattered and broken, like the remnants of something that had once been whole. I didn't know if Mark would come back. I didn't know if we could fix this, or if he would ever look at me the same way again. But I knew one thing for sure. I had done this to myself, and now I had to face the consequences. The days after Mark's conversation with me were agonizing. I kept replaying everything over and over in my mind, trying to find the moment where it all went wrong. The affair with Officer Blake was just the surface, but beneath it was a deeper fracture in my marriage. I had ignored the cracks for so long, hoping they would heal on their own, but now it was too late. Mark had already made his decision. He wasn't the man he had been, and neither was I. Mark's absence became more pronounced in the house. He wasn't physically gone, but emotionally, he had checked out. The quietness between us was suffocating. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just didn't engage. Each day felt like I was walking through fog, not knowing where to go or how to fix what I had broken. I tried to speak to him, but each attempt was met with indifference. He wasn't angry anymore, and that was worse than any fight. The anger could have been something I could work with, but the cold silence, that was unbearable. Then, one evening, it happened. Mark handed me the divorce papers. He didn't say much when he gave them to me. There were no dramatic words or long speeches. He simply placed the papers on the kitchen counter and said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending. It's over, Eliza." I picked up the papers with trembling hands, my stomach turning in knots. For the first time, I saw the reality of what I had done, the finality of it. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything. The lies, the neglect, the distance I had created between us. I had pushed him so far that even now, when I was ready to fight for us, he was already gone. "I'm sorry," I whispered, but the words felt hollow. "I never meant for this to happen." Mark didn't look at me. "I know you didn't. But intentions don't change reality. We can't go back to what we were, Eliza. I've tried to make it work, but I can't anymore." I felt a lump form in my throat. The tears that had been building up for weeks finally spilled over, but there was no one to comfort me, no one to tell me it would be okay. It was my fault, and I knew it. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. We'll figure out the details later," Mark continued. "I'm leaving tomorrow. I think it's best if we have some space." I nodded, unable to speak. My heart felt like it was shattering, piece by piece, but I deserved it. I had destroyed everything. The person I had been, the life we had built, gone, just like that. Mark turned to leave, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't try to stop him. There was nothing left to say, nothing I could do. He had made his choice, and so had I. As he walked out of the kitchen, I collapsed onto the couch, the weight of the divorce papers pressing into my hands. The silence that filled the room was deafening, but it was a silence I had earned. I had pushed him to the edge, and now there was no turning back. I had lost him, and in the process, I had lost myself.